You know that very common saying, work smarter, not harder? Well, I'm starting to wonder if it has been used so much that people have stopped thinking about what it actually means, because there is an epidemic of people working harder and not smarter in the online business world in particular. And in today's episode of the Heart-Centered Business podcast, I'm going to share with you one way in particular that I see people making their own lives harder and their business feel harder when they think they are doing it smarter. So if you want to work smarter and not harder, this episode is for you. This is episode number 484, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/484. Let's jump in. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. You might be a little bit curious about how we are going to work smarter and not harder by reading the title of this podcast episode, because it's about spaghetti. But it is an analogy that I think is very helpful, so please bear with me. And this actually came out of a conversation in the planning posse earlier this year. So if you're not yet aware, every year I sell a business planner. But it's not just a planner. It comes with a whole year of learning how to create and implement a business plan that works for you. A business plan that allows you to have a balance between focus and structure and the flexibility and freedom of getting creative and being responsive. So, in the planning system, we have our quarterly planning calls. There are a bunch of calls that we do throughout the year, but we have quarterly planning together. And in one of those calls earlier this year, someone asked me about deciding whether to make their webinar a free webinar or a paid webinar. Now, if that's a question that you have, I will pop a link in the show notes of this episode to a previous podcast episode where I've actually gone into the strategy behind that. But the reason why I raised this conversation is because I had one of those moments, and I hope that you have these moments as often and consistently as possible yourself, where I made this statement and immediately I was like, wow, I feel so smart right now. Oh, that's one that needs to land. So I immediately wrote it down as something that I wanted to record as a podcast episode. And I even said to everyone on the call, wait, I'm just going to write this down because I don't want to forget this one, because it is such a really critical conversation that I think everyone will benefit from. So I'll link to, in the show notes of today's episode, I'll link to the podcast about paid versus free webinars. And I want to say, I'll always have an opinion about deciding on a certain strategy, or I'll always have some advice if you ask me for advice on how to do something in your business or how to decide on which type of strategy to implement in your business as well. But ultimately, asking me or anyone what you should do in your business as part of your strategy is not how you make your strategy smarter. It is a way for you to get some ideas. It's a way for you to maybe finesse the decisions that you're making. And I'm not at all diminishing the value of working with a business mentor or a business coach. I'd be talking myself out of business if I was doing that. However, getting someone else's advice on how to do something or what to do or where the gaps might be in your strategy is not the way that you actually make that business strategy more strategic. It's not the way that you make it better ultimately. And it certainly isn't the way that you sustainably move towards a smarter and more effective and efficient business. So let me explain why. let's think about this through the example of a webinar. And you see that smart business people out there are running webinars. So you decide that you are going to run a webinar as well. But you need to learn how to run a webinar. You wouldn't just try and make it up on the fly because you want to be smart about this. So you sign up for a free training that you find on how to create, promote and run a webinar, and you do the free training and you get that advice and you think, wow, like this is a smart way to do it, right? So you go and run the webinar, but it doesn't make any sales. And so you think, well, I clearly haven't done this right. I need to be smarter about the way that I do this. I want to make sure that I'm running my webinar the right way. And so you decide to go and find a course that will teach you even more details of how to not just run a webinar, but run a webinar that converts. But before you run the next webinar after doing this course, you realize from the insights you get from the course, actually, the topic was wrong and the way that I structured it was wrong. And so now you feel smarter, right? You're going to run a new webinar that's got a different topic. You're going to structure it in a way that is going to help you to make sales. And then you run it. And let's say you get 2 sales and you think, wow, it's working, but it could be smarter. So then you hire a copywriter and they help you to write up the webinar promo page and the sign up pages and the email sequences. And then you run it again and you make a couple of sales again. And then you think, oh, actually, I remember from the course that I did, that person offered one-to-one sessions. So I'm going to go to that person and I'm going to get them to help me because clearly I'm missing something. I'm not doing this smartly enough. So I'm going to get them to help me to refine my webinar. Maybe I need a new topic. And so you can see there's this pattern of going to an external source to get some advice or some strategy or some help. And you would look at this and do this thinking you're being smart here, right? You're being really smart. Instead of just trying to figure it out on your own, you're getting help and you're doing this a really smart way. You're getting help from people who've had success with this before. That's really smart, right? When we start a business and whenever we try a new strategy or a new offer, there is a need to kind of adopt this approach. A need to either learn from people who've done it before, learn from people who are experts in this area, learn from people who have the skills that you may not yet have. And yes, that is smart to not have to reinvent the wheel, to get advice from other people, to Google it, to do some research. But it is important to recognize that when you are trying those things out, when you are experimenting, when you are running that webinar over and over again, you are throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? And there is a time and a place for us to adopt that spaghetti at the wall approach. So if we think about literally throwing spaghetti at the wall in this webinar's example, right, you're trying all the things. You try different webinar topics and you're throwing that as spaghetti at the wall, trying different ways to promote it. You're learning about the copywriting. You're learning about the structure of the webinar. So you're trying all of these different things out. And that is a really reasonable way to experiment and try and figure this out and to craft and refine that strategy for your business. But what happens if you're learning more and more and more about webinars and you're learning more and more things that you need to do? Do you just keep doing all of it? So you learn that you should include testimonials throughout your webinar. And then you learn that you should make sure that you are using bridge messaging. And you learn that you should be promoting it both organically and through paid strategies. And so you're promoting it in Facebook groups. You're promoting your webinar to your list. You're promoting it using ads. You're promoting it on all of your social platforms. And then you learn about how to do reels that do a really good job of promoting a webinar. So you do that. And then you learn about these chatbots and you set up a chatbot that is going going to automatically invite people to enroll in your webinar. And then you learn about having reminder emails that go out to people before the webinar. So you add in a 1-day reminder and a week before reminder, and then you get told you should do a 30 minutes before reminder, and you add that in as well. And then after your webinar, you're following up with people one-on-one, and you're sending out follow-up emails, and you're promoting your upsell on social media, and you're just adding more and more and more. So at some point, you're still throwing spaghetti at the wall, and you now have hundreds of spaghettis that you need to throw at the wall. And so this was the conversation that came up on the planning call in the planning posse. I said, being in learning mode is great. This person was considering doing a training program on how to sell low ticket webinars. I was like, yep, being in learning mode is great. But if you keep learning new strategies and new ways to promote your business and new ways to sell your services, because ultimately the decision to run a webinar is not because you want to be known for running webinars, it's because you were trying to sell something. If you just keep learning new ways to sell your stuff without discerning what your specific strategy is, what your specific mix is, what your specific step-by-step client attraction process might be, you're still just throwing spaghetti. That spaghetti might be smarter. It might be very well-informed spaghetti. It might be the exact same spaghetti that $1 million business owner throws at the wall as well, but it's still spaghetti. And I think sometimes we forget that the entire saying is throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And it's the see what sticks part that people are forgetting. It is the see what sticks part that people ignore, and therefore they just get busier and busier, and they convince themselves they're working smarter, but they are working harder. What we need in order to actually complete the cycle is to see what sticks. And that requires information, not information from someone else, not advice from a strategist, not even me, but data. Strategy gets smarter when you make decisions with data. Your job is to refine your strategy down to what sticks for you. What is your spaghetti that stuck to the wall, that did its job? And your job is to refine down to your best spaghetti, your best strategy. And it's the same with all the different ways that we are learning as business owners to attract and convert clients, to deliver our services, to grow our business. Another really powerful example of this is with social posts. I get asked by people all the time, should I include links in my posts on Facebook? Should I put hashtags on my posts on Instagram? Should I do reels? How do I structure my social posts? I did a podcast episode recently about using theme days for socials. That was in direct response to questions I get asked about posts for socials. I get asked about how to put calls to action in captions. Should you do it all the time? Should you include images all the time? How to write good questions for socials, right? All of these things are tips that people have picked up over time as to how to do well on social media, or they're questions that they have. But the number one thing I ask people to do when they are asking me about what to post on socials or how to structure it, or have I done it right, or should I be asking more questions, or should I be asking less questions because no one's answering my questions, the number one thing I say for them to go and do is go and look at your socials. Go and look at your socials. Go and look at the data. And if you have not posted on social media, on your platform, your Facebook page or your Instagram consistently for an extended period of time, the data cannot tell you. So many people get frustrated with social media posting because they see their reach shrinking and shrinking over time. They feel like they're doing more and more on socials and getting less and less results. But in a lot of cases, the reason why their reach on socials is shrinking so much is because they're flashing and crashing. They're doing 20 posts in a week and then they disappear for 6 weeks. And then they're doing another 10 posts because they got really excited about this thing that they saw on social media, about posting on social media, so they did it. And then they've lost their stamina again. And all you're doing is robbing yourself of the opportunity to get smarter with your social strategy. Because again, yes, I will have opinions and advice on your posts on social media, but those opinions and advice are a 1% improvement compared to the real insights that would directly influence your social strategy if you just got it out into the world. The number of people who ask me for advice on posts for their social media, who when I go and look at their Facebook page haven't posted in 6 months, is wild. And instead of being a diligent learner as to what your audience wants, as to what works for you, what your voice wants to say, you're asking everyone else and putting everyone else in the seat of being the expert about your business and your audience. But you are the expert about your business and your audience. And your job is to just get it out there. In order to make your social strategy smarter, I say to people, you need 100 days of daily posting on a Facebook page to have insights from that data that can actually influence decision making about what you're going to do moving forward. And without that, all we're doing is throwing smarter spaghetti, slightly smarter spaghetti. We're not actually being strategic. So you could spend the next 100 days learning about posting on social media, writing posts ready for your social media, going and getting better photos taken, refining your branding, playing around in Canva. But until those posts are actually shared to your social media consistently, you cannot collect the data to know how to do it any better. You cannot collect the data on what's actually working and what people are engaging with. So it's still spaghetti. Now, inside some of my programs, including the planning system, there is an event that I run, which is called the Imperfect Post Project. It's the IPP. And when I talk about the Imperfect Post Project, people get so excited about it because what we do in the IPP is over the course of just a couple of weeks, we'll have 3 or 4 workshops. And in those workshops, we actually create and schedule 100 posts to go out over 100 days on people's primary social platform. Now, as you can imagine, for someone who's really struggled to post consistently, or their only posting experience on socials has been quite haphazard, or that flash and crash style of posting, the idea of finally being able to have consistent posts go out over 100 days and feeling like that's all taken care of could lead you to believe that, wow, that's really valuable and will be valuable to the business. Think about the audience growth that could happen. Think about the sales that could happen, the leads you could generate. But I'm going to tell you a little secret about the IPP. The number one outcome of the IPP is not audience growth. It's not leads. It's not sales. Those things do happen, but the most important, most valuable thing that people get from doing the IPP is the data we can then collect and interpret after 100 days of consistent posting. That data is so much more important and critical to the long-term growth and sustainability of that business, and particularly the sustained focus of that business owner on creating and sharing content on social media. One of the most common reasons why people feel like maybe online business is not for them, or they need to find another way or a new strategy, is because they don't like social media. They don't like being on social media. They don't like supporting social media. They don't like posting on social media. They don't like consuming social media, right? And it is a very common challenge that people face as business owners. But when I look at the way people have attempted to use social media for their business, I'm not surprised. I would feel like social media was a waste of time if I had spent the last 2 years doing course after course, following expert after expert, trying strategy after strategy, and not seeing consistent growth in the results that work and effort was generating. When people tell me they hate social media, how do they run their business without social media? How do they get off social media? My first question is, if you were spending a few hours a week on social media and that was bringing in 5 figures a week in income, would you still hate it? And for most people, the answer is no. The reason they hate social media is because they feel lost. They feel like there's so much conflicting advice. There's so many things you need to do. There's so much you need to do perfectly. And every time they feel like they're doing the right thing, it's not generating the promised results. And so it just feels like a never-ending battle, a never-ending learning curve that doesn't actually result in growth or the results and income that they feel they are due. Have a look at your own strategy over the last few months. On average, how many hours a week did you spend on social media? And how much money did that social media effort actually bring into your business? And if it was 10 hours a week on social media and you didn't make any sales on social media, I can see why you would be a bit perturbed about that. It's like showing up to a job and never getting paid. Well, of course, you're going to start to resent it. The problem is that for most people, the answer to how to get it to work more effectively is not following another social media expert. It's not a secret set of hashtags that will magically grow your audience with the exact right people. For most people, the answer to how to refine your social media strategy, how to be smarter on social media, how to get better results from your social media is in the data from your previous social posts. And if you have not been posting consistently for an extended period of time, the answer is in posting consistently for an extended period of time and then reviewing the data. I bet if you've posted on social media fairly regularly over your time as a business owner, you'll have experienced this thing that I experience all the time. And that is that posts that I chuck up on social media on a whim because I'm doing something fun or I just had a random idea and I wanted to share it, are often the ones that get the most engagement and the most reach. And then I sit at my desk, I spend 2 hours writing what I think is going to be the most amazing, insightful caption. I select one of the most beautiful photos that I got taken at a recent photo shoot, and I put that one up and crickets. Doesn't even reach the normal levels of audience that I would reach with just a regular post, right? And that can be part of the problem because we put so much pressure on an individual post to perform. The more time and energy and effort you put into a post, the more you expect from it in return. It's like going to a job, right? If you put an hour in, you're expecting an hour's pay. If you're putting 3 hours in, you're expecting 3 hours pay. But that's not what happens with social posts. And so rather than overthinking it and trying to learn how to make every single strand of spaghetti you're throwing at the wall a little smarter, why not just practice throwing the spaghetti and then paying attention to what sticks? and interpreting that data, using that data to drive decisions so that next time around you can see, well, if I focus on certain types of content, if I focus on certain elements of my messaging that seem to get the most resonance, does that improve my overall results? And if yes, right, now we can be smarter. Now the strategy is actually smarter, not just the spaghetti. I'm using so many folksy sayings in this episode, so I'm going to do another one. Done is better than perfect. Right? The reason why done is better than perfect is because done gets you the data. So I want to leave you with this from this episode. The secret to smarter business strategy comes from refinement, and refinement is only smart if it is backed by data. If you'd like to be a data nerd with me, inside the planning system, we also have a monthly data day. There is a reporting tool that I share with people. It's a part of the quarterly Excel planner. It's got a reporting tab on that planner. And so that's where we collect up our monthly data from socials and other elements of your business so that we can use those to inform decisions in your quarterly planning as we go through the year. Plus, the IPP, the Imperfect Post Project, is something that we do together inside the planning system in quarter one most years, and we'll be doing it in quarter one of 2026. So if you're listening to this episode when it comes out and you're not yet a member of the Planning Posse for 2026 and you'd like to join us, I'll make sure there's a link for you over at the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/484. And just to let you know, most years the digital planning system is available from mid-October through until mid-January for purchase. If you want the print version, because I do a print upgrade where I send you out the yearly planner, the day planning system and some stationery, the print window closes in November, usually towards the end of November each year. So make sure that you go and check that out. I'll pop the link at tashcorbin.com/484. And if you've got any questions about the planning system and whether it might be the right fit for you, please do make sure that you get in touch and ask. A quick little note about the planning system. It is neurodivergent brain friendly, mostly because I created and refined the planning system and I am neurodivergent, and initially I created it pre-diagnosis, and when I did actually go through learning about ADHD and my specific executive dysfunction and some of the things that brains sometimes need to stay focused and stay on track, I realized I had created a neurodivergent friendly planning system, mostly because that's what I needed. So it is neurodivergent friendly. It is very customizable. It is built on solid, proven philosophies and principles of effectiveness, productivity, business strategy, and how brains function, whether that's neurotypical or neurodivergent. And also, it is not one of those long, unwieldy business plans like you would see if you were applying for loans or grant funding or wanting to get approved for certain awards or anything along those lines. It is a business plan that does one very specific and critical job, and that is when you sit down to do work, you know what work to do. So if you have a business and that is something that you struggle with, then please do come and check out the Heart Centre Business Planning System. And if you've got any questions, as I said, just get in touch and ask. I'm unafraid to say, I don't think it would be the right fit for you, or maybe this is something else that you need first, or maybe you'd be better off working with XYZ person. I'm not attached to whether you join or not, but if you're unsure, please do make sure that you reach out and ask and let me know a little bit about your business, what you struggle with, what your questions are. I'm happy to guide you and provide advice as to whether I think it's the right fit or not. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. I'm going to be honest. I really want to get my hands on your business. not in the way that that might sound, but I do want to help. Not in a detached, listen to my podcast and hopefully you'll get some golden nuggets out of it way. I want us to work together. I want to be involved. And there are some of my programs and packages that allow us to work in that way together to really align your strategy, your actions, and your goals. So if you know that now is the time to get stuck into your business strategy, to get mentorship, support, and hand-holding, as well as practical advice and feedback, I would love for us to explore how we might be able to do that together. Whether it's joining my Takeoff program to get you to the point where you are attracting leads and making sales more consistently, whether it's through the accelerator to help you really narrow in on where your leverage points are to scale your business beyond 6 figures and further, or whether it's that high touch, high connection, one-on-one experience of working together as a VIP. I invite you to send an email to me at support@tashcorbin.com. Tell me what your goals are, tell me what you need help with, and let's look at how we might be able to work together. I would love to provide the mentorship, guidance, feedback, and advice that you need to know exactly where you need to focus right now to get it implemented and done and to get your business taking off and scaling. There's no obligation and there's no hard selling. I genuinely just want to make sure that I'm across what's going on for you and that you know what the options are for us to potentially be working together. And of course, if I have free resources that might be able to support you, I will point you in the direction of those as well. So get in touch, send that email to support@tashcorbin.com, and I really look forward to hearing from you.